Good morning everyone. Arithmetic conduction, Kohlraasch law, conductometric titrations, everything is over. So now we'll see. Today almost we will finish the electrochemistry. The last part in the electrochemistry is the batteries. So in today's class we will discuss about these batteries. What is a battery? Generally is a combination of cells. If you connect the cells, two or more cells in a series, you will get battery. This we can use for the energy source purpose as a backup. And here we have two types of batteries. One is the primary batteries and secondary batteries. The primary batteries means they are non-rechargeable in nature. Once if you use it, you cannot recharge it, you have to throw away. The second type of batteries we have here, secondary batteries, they are called rechargeable batteries. So after getting discharge, again you can recharge the batteries by applying external electric current, by supplying some electric current. That we will see. Types of batteries. The first one, primary batteries. So the batteries which are non-rechargeable in nature, and these are non-rechargeable batteries. So battery used once for a long time, it can get discharged and you cannot use it, you have to just throw out that type of battery. In case of battery, primary batteries, the reactions can take place like this. Reactant can be converted into the product only one direction, and it produces some electric current. This is during the discharging process. It will take place like this. The best example for primary batteries here, dry cell and mercury cell. Dry cell and mercury cell. And these are the two primary batteries. So we will see in detail about one by one. First dry cell and then mercury cell. Primary batteries. Dry cell, it is also called Leclanche cell. Based on the hand of the scientist Leclanche cell or dry cell. The working of the functioning of the batteries or dry cells almost look like the galvanic cell, simple galvanic cell, where at anode oxidation takes place and the cathode reduction takes place. Then electrons can flow from anode to cathode and the current can flow from cathode to anode. The same functioning in every cell, but here anodes and cathodes are different and electrolytes are different, and cell construction is little different compared to the that galvanic cell. Overall, the phenomena are almost the same. And in case of dry cell, it is made up of zinc container. Dry cell is made up of zinc container. And this zinc container can act as anode. This is a zinc container. And this is zinc anode. And this zinc container will dip one graphite rod, and this graphite rod can act as cathode. And this is a graphite rod. This is cathode. And in between this graphite and zinc will fill the electrolyte. Mostly this is a paste of manganese oxide, manganese dioxide and carbon, and also apart from this we will take a mixture of zinc chloride and ammonium chloride. And here zinc chloride, ammonium chloride can act as an electrolyte, and around this graphite rod or carbon rod we will take this manganese dioxide powder along with the carbon powder. This is a simple the construction of the dry cell, how it looks like. Here anode, is a zinc rod, and a cathode is a carbon rod or graphite rod, and electrolyte is a mixture of ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. The chemical reactions takes place with dry cell. It is complicated, but we can assume like this: the chemical reactions at anode, oxidation can take place. Zinc can give electrons at anode oxidation, and at cathode reduction we have manganese dioxide will react with that ammonium ions, then it can form Mn2, let us take 2 MnO2 and 2 ammonium ions, 2 ammonia and water. So this type of reactions can take place at anode and cathode. And if you see overall net reaction, by addition of these two reactions we will get the net reaction. Zinc, manganese dioxide and ammonium, that can give zinc 2 plus Mn2O3, ammonia and water. This is a net reaction. Sometimes this Mn2O3 we can write as MnOOH. You can see in somewhere they can represent like this. Here manganese can be reduced from +4 oxidation to +3 oxidation state. So both the case the oxidation state of manganese is +3 only. So here oxidation, zinc can oxidize and manganese can reduce. This is overall net reaction in the dry cell. So mostly these dry cells we can use for regular purpose in the wall clocks and the torch lights. They will use for the production of electricity. And the ammonia produced in this chemical reaction, that can react with zinc. It can form one compound. This is a very important point you should remember. Zinc ions produced here can react with ammonia. It can form one complex, zinc complex. You should remember this complex. So when in the dry cell, ammonia when reacts with the zinc, what type of complex we will get? Tetraamine zinc complex we will get. And overall, the cell EMF for in the case of dry cell, EMF of the cell is approximately 1.5 ohms. You can see in a regular usage batteries, they will mention 1.5 volts the EMF of the cell. Some other important points you should remember here about the dry cell, that is this ammonium chloride used as electrolyte, that can react with the zinc container and it can corrode even the cell is not in use. Whether the cell in use or not in use doesn't matter, slowly it can undergo discharge, means that ammonium chloride can react with zinc and it can cause the leakage in nature. So here ammonium chloride corrodes the zinc container, so it can react with the zinc and it can corrode. That will lead to the leakage of the battery. Sometimes you can observe some leakages of the batteries for longer hours or longer days. That is due to the reaction of ammonium chloride with the zinc. And one more point, here we are using manganese dioxide. Generally manganese dioxide can act as a depolarizer. The role of manganese dioxide in dry cell is depolarizer. means it can absorb the released hydrogen gas. If any hydrogen gas releases in that reaction, the gas releases that also causes the leakages. So to overcome that, we will use this manganese dioxide. It can absorb hydrogen gas. Like that, it can act as a depolarizer, and also it can produce moisture. It can create the moisture. So in the moisture, the ions can move very easily. The mobility of ions is very easy in case of moisture medium than the drying medium. Dry condition, ions cannot move that much easily, but in moist wet condition, they can move very easily. The mobility is also very fast. So that is why we will use this manganese dioxide in the dry cell. These are some important points you should remember about the dry cell. Its main construction and function. I mean, what happens at anode and what happens at cathode. Overall, the two electrons can involve in this reaction. The cell EMF is 1.5 ohms. Let's second primary cell here is mercury cell. Again, in case of mercury cell, anode is a zinc that which is having mercuric amalgam, zinc amalgam, that is a anode. And cathode can be here. It is a mixture of mercuric oxide and carbon. And this is a cathode. Anode is a zinc amalgam, and the cathode is a mercuric oxide and carbon rod. In the overall reactions, in case of mercury cell, at anode, the chemical reactions can take place like this. And also one point here, electrolyte. Anode, cathode, and electrolyte. Electrolyte used in the mercury cell is a paste of potassium hydroxide and zinc oxide. Paste of potassium hydroxide and zinc oxide. This paste can be used as electrolyte. Now it's anode oxidation as usual. Zinc amalgam can undergo oxidation. H2 OH minus. Zinc amalgam to OH minus. You can give zinc oxide plus water and releases electrons. And at cathode, this mercuric oxide will take up electrons. You can give mercury liquid to OH minus. Now overall net reaction, the mercury cell, again anode oxidation, it releases electrons, and that electrons move towards the cathode, and the cathode this type of reactions can take place. And the net reaction or overall reaction, by adding of this anodic and cathodic reaction, you will get zinc amalgam, 2OH minus will get cancelled out, and water will get cancelled out, electrons will cancel, and what left? HGO, and can give zinc oxide plus mercury liquid. Now, if we see in the previous overall reaction, there is no involvement of ions. There is no discharge and releasing of ions. There is no consumption of the ions here. But whereas in the previous case, ions involvement is there, the net reaction, but here no involvement of ions. Means the concentration of the solution is constant throughout the working of mercuric cell. So no ion is involved. That is why it can show almost constant potential throughout the lifetime. Whereas in case of dry cell, you can see you cannot see the same potential 1.5 volts from starting to the till the cell to get there. There is the complete lifespan of the dry cell. The voltage may not be constant. It may change sometime. There is due to the leakages, some decreasing in the concentration of electrolyte. Due to the involvement of that ions, the concentration of ions may decrease. So ultimately, the cell EMF may decrease, or in that case, in the Lager hours. In case of mercury cell, it is not like that. The EMF of the cell is constant till the end of the life of the battery. This is very important point here. Here the cell potential is approximately 1.3 volts in case of mercury cell. The cell potential or EMF. The previous case it is 1.5, and here the cell potential is 1.35 volts. And the cell potential remains constant. In case of mercury electrode, the cell potential remains constant during its life. So why? Because in the overall reaction there is no involvement of ions. That is why the cell potential remains constant. That is why these mercury cells mainly we can use in the wristwatches. You cannot see any disturbance in the working of the wristwatches because the cell potential throughout the life is constant. Mainly it can be used in small electron devices like hearing aids, low current devices like hearing aids and watches, etc. Mainly we can use in the low current devices because the cell potential is very less in case of mercury cell, but this point is important. The cell potential remains constant in case of mercury cell. These two are the primary batteries. Once the battery will get dead, you cannot use it again. You have to throw it. The primary batteries, non-rechargeable in nature. Now we have the second type of batteries. That is rechargeable batteries. The second type is called secondary batteries or simply rechargeable. These are rechargeable batteries. So in here reactant can be converted to the product and it can release the current through the discharging process. Again the product can be converted back into the reactant. This is the chemical reactions here. Reactant to the product. During this is forward direction. This is during discharging process. Product plus electric current. It generates electric current. And during charging process, again products, again you apply the external supply of electric current. The process can undergo recharging. The products can take up the electric current and they will convert into the reactants. So this overall is a reversible process. You can see the reactions involved in rechargeable or secondary batteries are reversible in nature. These are reversible reactions. Means we can say mostly secondary batteries can access both electrochemical cells and electrolytic cells. Nothing but can access both electrochemical cells. General electrochemical cell means conversion of chemical energy into electrical energy. This is during discharging process. During the discharging process, it can behave as electrochemical cell, and during the charging process, it can act as electrolytic cell. This is during charging process. We will apply some external energy. But in case of primary cell, only one type of the cell, it is irreversible in nature. Only they can act as electrochemical cell, galvanic cell. No electrolytic cell there. The best example for the secondary batteries, rechargeable batteries are lead acid storage battery, or is also called lead accumulator. Lead acid battery and nickel cadmium battery. You can call NiCad battery or NiCad cell. These two are very important secondary batteries, rechargeable batteries. Again we will discuss in detail about lead acid battery. First one, lead acid battery, or we can say lead acid storage battery, or we can say lead accumulator. Lead acid storage battery we can say. Mostly these lead acid batteries or lead accumulator we can use for the power backup, mostly in automobiles as inverters. This can be used in automobiles as a power backup. Also mostly in household purpose, these lead acid batteries can be used as inverters. These are the main applications for the lead acid storage battery in vehicles, automobiles especially, and the household purpose inverters. And again the construction and functioning of this lead acid storage battery. In lead acid storage battery, anode is the lead. Lead acts as an anode. Lead in here. the lead Pb. Lead acts as an anode, and the cathode is the lead oxide coated lead. PbO2 is the cathode. The electrolyte used here is 38% H2SO4. Electrolyte 38% solution of H2SO4. The construction of the lead acid storage battery is like this. It contains a series of anodes and cathodes, a series of plates, we can say. We have all anode plates and cathode plates. All lead plates. Series of lead plates. This is Pb, and this is also Pb, and this is Pb. All anode plates, they'll connect to the constant wire. So all these lead plates connected to one end. Similarly, cathode. The cathode is a lead oxide. All lead oxide plates, it can be connected to other end. These are the cathodic plates. They are connected to the another. Now this overall cathode negative plate. This is the anode positive. And in between we will take the electrolyte. Here we will take the electrolyte solution, that is 38% H2SO4 is the electrolyte. This is a normal the construction of lead acid battery. It contains series of anode plates and series of cathodes, and all they connected to one end anode, and all the cathodes they connected to the one end. Now the chemical reactions in this lead acid storage battery. First, during discharging process, what happened during the discharging? At anode, and at anode oxidation can take place. This Pb will react with SO4 2 minus, and lead sulfate can accumulate at lead anode, and it can release 2 electrons. At cathode, and this lead dioxide can take up that electrons. Again, it can form lead sulfate can be deposited over the cathode. Now, overall reaction during the discharging process, net reaction, lead dioxide, this one 2 moles of sulfuric acid. I can be converted to 2 moles of lead sulfate, and this is water from here, 2H2. So this is a overall net reaction during the discharging process of the lead acid storage battery. This is what happens here. So during discharging process, it has the sulfate ions. So we have the electrolyte sulfate 2 minus ions, and these sulfate 2 ions can move towards anode. Generally here anode lead can release lead 2 plus and 2 electrons. The chemical reactions takes place at anode. It can give lead 2 plus into the solution and 2 electrons. And this lead 2 plus and sulfate ions they can form lead sulfate precipitate, and that precipitate can accumulate over the lead anode. It can deposit as lead sulfate over the anode. Similarly, this is lead dioxide, and this is a lead plates. It is anode and this is cathode. Again, the lead dioxide here cathode, and they can take the electrons, and the lead dioxide again releases lead 2 plus ions to the solution. Here lead dioxide also releases lead 2 plus into the solution. Why here cathode reduction case, lead is present in place 4 oxidation state, that can be converted into the plus 2 reduction process. Here anode also releases lead 2 plus and cathode also releases lead 2 plus. Again this lead 2 plus will react with some other sulfate ions, and they can accumulate as lead sulfate over the cathodic plate. So overall in the reaction, and the lead anodic plate and the cathodic plate and lead sulfate can be deposited. Why? Because this anodic plate can releases ready to place ions that can react with sulfate ions, and cathodic plate also releases ready to place ions that can react with sulfate ions. So both can form lead sulfates. They can take sulfate ions from the sulfuric acid. Means what? Overall, if you pass 2 electrons, the overall electrons involved in this net reaction during anode cathode, 2 electrons are there. So if you pass 2 electrons, it can consume 2 moles of sulfuric acid. So 1 mole at anode and 1 mole at cathode. Means what? Here if you pass 2 Faraday's current through the lead acid storage battery, then it can consume 2 moles of sulfuric acid. And if you pass 1 Faraday, it can consume 1 mole of sulfuric acid. Means what? Here the N factor for sulfuric acid in case of lead acid storage battery is 1. This is very important. In case of lead acid storage battery, N factor of sulfuric acid is 1. Generally we have sulfuric acid N factor 2, but in this case it is 1. So by withdrawn for the 2 moles of electron charge, 2 moles of sulfuric acid can be consumed. This is the reaction overall in the lead acid storage battery. This is during discharging process. Now what happened during discharging process? The concentration of lead sulfuric acid is decreasing. So sulfuric acid can be consumed in the during discharging process. This point also very important. Sulfuric acid can be consumed during the discharging process, or the concentration of sulfuric acid can be decreased during the discharging process. And during recharging process, once if you withdrawn the some current from the battery, again if power come back, in case of inverters for example, then the reaction goes backward. There is a recharging process can take place. And what chemical reactions can take place during recharge? Yes, the chemical reactions can take place reverse. Means lead sulfate, both at anode and cathode, they releases lead and lead oxides. During recharging process, we can take the reaction with lead sulfate. We can give the lead anode and lead dioxide cathode, and it releases sulfuric acid into the solution. This kind of reaction can take place during the recharging. Means during recharging, it can act as electrolytic cell in case of lead acid storage battery. And during discharging process, that can act as electrochemical cell. So here some important points you should remember. In case of lead acid storage battery, number of moles of Faraday should be equal to number of moles of electrons is equal to number of moles of H2SO4, or number of Faradays is equals to number of moles of H2SO4. If pass whatever the number of Faradays, that many number of moles of H2SO4 can be consumed, or number of moles of electrons. And also N factor for H2SO4 in lead acid storage battery is 1. And the concentration of sulfuric acid is decreased during the discharging process, and its concentration increases during the recharging process. So these are some important points about the lead acid storage battery. Next second type of secondary battery storage battery is the nickel cell. Is a nickel cadmium cell. Simply we can call nickel cell. Directly here, anode in case of nickel cell, it is a little expensive in nature, this nickel cadmium cell. Anode is a cadmium, and here cathode is a nickel in plus the oxidation state, so nickel hydroxide, and electrolyte used here. Either you can use sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide. This is electrolyte in case of nickel cadmium cell. Again, the chemical reactions during discharging process. During the discharging process. Here, anode oxidation. The cadmium, again it releases cadmium 2 plus ions, and those cadmium 2 plus ions can react with the electrolyte. It contains OH minus and will form cadmium hydroxide and releases 2 electrons. And at cathode, this nickel oxide, actually this is write as nickel oxide, hydroxide, it will take up 2 electrons. You can give nickel hydroxide and 2 OH minus. The overall cell reaction here, net reaction, cadmium and this nickel hydroxide to nickel. This is 2 nickel hydroxide. It can give cadmium hydroxide plus nickel hydroxide. And this is a overall net reaction. This is a during discharging process. During the discharging process. And next, one more type of cells here, that is fuel cells. Fuel cells also very important. Fuel cells. In generally galvanic cells, after some time the reactants may be consumed completely and the cell can die. Here fuel cells, generally we use the fuels. If we constant supply of the reactant, that is the fuels, the cell can work for longer hours. And also fuel cells are more efficient in nature. In fuel cells we can convert the heat of combustion into the energy. It is like say the thermoplants, equal to the thermoplants. So in case of general thermal power plants, we will get the energy almost the efficiency is 40% only. Whereas if we use the fuel cells, we can get the current production is almost 70% efficient they are in nature. Generally in fuel cells, heat of combustion is converted into the electrical energy. Just here we will burn the fuels. In same the thermal power plants will burn the fuels, but there we will get the current efficiency very less, and also so many pollutants can be released in the environment. But fuel cells is eco-friendly in nature, less number of pollutants can be come out. But the construction of the fuel cell, it is look like the galvanics only. Let me take one of the example, the best example of fuel cell here, hydrogen oxygen fuel cell. So like this we have other type of fuel cells also. In place of hydrogen you can take methane, oxygen, alcohol oxygen fuel cells. But here where hydrogen acts as a fuel and oxygen acts as an oxidizer, which can burn that fuel. Here hydrogen is a fuel and oxygen is the oxidizer. The construction of the fuel cell is similar to the galvanic cell. It will be designed like a galvanic cell only. Here we can take 2 electrodes, so one is anode and one is cathode. And mostly here we take graphite or carbon rods as the electrodes. Both anode and cathode is a carbon rods. And these rods are incorporated with the metals, the catalyst like palladium or platinum. They can be incorporated or coated with some active catalyst. They can be incorporated like active catalyst palladium mostly are flat. Why? Because to increase the activity of these electrodes, they'll incorporate with this palladium or platinum. And we can supply the hydrogen, that is a fuel, and oxygen, that is the oxidizer, to these electrodes. In between we'll take electrolyte. The electrolyte is the sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide, can act as electrolyte. This is overall the construction. These are the connected to the anode and cathode. And these are perforated or porous material. Perforated or porous. Both are carbon electrodes only. Porous carbon electrodes, which are incorporated with some active catalyst like palladium or platinum to increase the activity. This is also carbon electrode. Here one is act as a anode and one is acts as a cathode. In between we will take the sodium hydroxide electrolyte. When you pass hydrogen from an end and oxygen from other end, and they can enter into they can pass through these porous electrodes and they will reach the sodium hydroxide. Then the chemical reactions can take place like this due to the active electrodes. At anode and cathode, the chemical reactions can take place like this. Anode. Here, this will pass the hydrogen to the anode, where oxidation can take place to hydrogen, and it will react with the electrolyte hydroxide solution. When you pass from the anodic side, it will penetrate into the sodium hydroxide and liberates water, 4 electrons. And the chemical reactions at cathode, and will pass oxidizer from the cathode side. Anyhow, here when you pass hydrogen, when react with this OH, it releases electrons, and these electrons can be captured by this cathode, where if you pass this oxygen, and that oxygen will react with, anyhow, this NaOH minus hydrogen can release water also. Now this oxygen can react with produced water and electrons. It can give the hydroxide. This is a chemical reactions can take place at cathode. Now the overall reaction, net reaction, the fuel cell, H2 plus O2, OH minus will cancel out, electrons will cancel, 2H2O, 4H2O, that can produce what? See, in case of hydrogen oxygen fuel cell, when you supply constant supply of hydrogen and oxygen, they can produce current. Apart from that, they can produce water. No other pollutants here. Hydrogen oxygen fuel cell. And this produced water, mostly these fuel cells we can use in the rockets, and this produced water can be used as a drinking water for astronauts. Used as drinking water for astronauts in space. See, we will get current and we will get only pure water, the hydrogen oxygen fuel cell. So this cell is almost 70% efficient. But this is more efficient than the general thermal power plants, where the efficiency is 40%. Efficiency of the cell is equals to 70%. With the thermal power plants, the efficiency is 40%. The efficiency of the cell we can calculate by using this formula. Efficiency of the cell.
Sir, 40% there in this
thermal plants. The efficiency is approximately 40%. The efficiency of cell can represent efficiency eta is equals to Gibbs free energy by enthalpy change. By using this formula, we can calculate the efficiency. Question number 1. This is a question. What current of 1 hour can be withdrawn from lead acid storage battery and the 49 grams of H2SO4 is consumed in that reaction? What it means 49 grams of H2SO4 consumed during discharging process. During discharging process, it can produce some electric current. Then how much electric current is produced if you do the discharging process for 1 hour? That overall 1 hour, how much amount of H2SO4 is consumed? 49 grams is consumed. We know that during discharging process, number of Faradays of current withdrawn from that lead acid storage battery is equals to number of moles of H2SO4 consumed. Number of moles of H2SO4. Faradays, how can we calculate Faraday is equal to I into T by 96,500. The current. Number of moles of H2SO4, this is 49 grams means 49 by 98, half mole. So half mole means we have the current is half mole Faraday. Half mole Faraday current we can write like this, I into T by 96,500 equal to this. Now we have to calculate the current. I is equals to, this is 1 by 2, 96,500 by time per hour. 1 hour means 60 into 60, 3600 seconds. If you simplify this one, we will get the current 13.4 amperes. Second question is a little advanced level question. What it is, during the discharging of lead storage battery which contains 3.5 liters of acid, the density of acid fell down from 1.294 gram per ml density to 1.139 grams of density. Then the H2SO4 which is having density 1.294 is 39% and that of 1.139 density the mass is 20%. Then how much amount of current is ampere per hour is derived from that battery. During discharging some amount of current can produce, but that we have to calculate in terms of ampere hours. How much current produced? How will know how much amount of H2SO4 consumed? We should know first. If you know the number of moles of H2SO4 consumed, that we can equate with the number of moles of Faradays. Once you know the number of moles of Faradays, we can calculate that into the ampere hour. So here during discharging process, then what is the initial amount of H2SO4 and then what is the final amount of H2SO4? If we calculate that one, from that we can identify the amount of H2SO4 is absorbed or consumed during the discharging process. Now let us take before discharge. Before discharging process, the amount of H2SO4. Before discharging process. Weight of H2SO4 or mass of H2SO4. So what is the mass? Then how much amount of H2SO4 is there? 3.5 liters, that you can convert into milliliters. 3500 milliliters. And whose mass percentage? That is 39%. 39 by 100 into density 1.294 grams per ml. So this is the total mass of the H2SO4 before discharging process. If you can simplify it, then you will get the value 1766.3 grams. So this much amount of H2SO4 is there before discharging process. Next, after discharging process, how much amount of H2SO4 left? After discharging process, mass of H2SO4. Again, simple stoichiometric calculations. Volume is the same only, 3500 ml, and here the percentage, mass percentage is 20. So 20 by 100. But what is the density here? 1.139 gram per ml. Again, if you simplify this one, you can identify the mass of H2SO4, that is 797.3 grams. So after discharging, the amount of H2SO4 left is this much. Then mass of H2SO4 consumed during discharging process. Mass of H2SO4 consumed during discharging process. So how much consumed? That is 1766.3 minus 797. Nothing but you will get 969 grams. And this is a weight. You want to calculate the current. First, you have to calculate the number of moles of Faradays. Now, number of moles of Faradays. Number of Faradays is equals to number of moles of H2SO4. The number of moles of H2SO4, that is equals to 969 by 98. This many moles means this much amount of current we have in terms of Faradays. So we know that I into T by 96,500 now is equals to 969 by 98. From this we have to calculate I into T. Then I into T is equals to 969 by 98 into 96,500. But here I is ampere, T is in seconds, but we required in ampere hour. So per hour, you have to convert that by dividing 3600 seconds. That can give in terms of hours. I into T. If you simplify this one, we will get it approximately 265.04 ampere hours. So this much amount of current can be drawn when H2SO4 is changed from that 1.2 density to the 1.13 and whose mass percentage 39% to 20%. What mass of 80%? This is a question. What mass of butane is required in butane oxygen fuel cell to obtain a current of 9.6 amperes for 30 minutes? And what is the current efficiency? Here 80% is the current efficiency. For this solution, just you can apply the Faraday's first law. Mass of butane, that is weight of butane, is equals to equivalent weight of butane by 96,500 into I into T. It is 80% current efficiency. So 80 by 100. This is a formula. Here I is known and T is given. Just we have to calculate what is the equivalent weight of butane in this particular reaction. Then we can identify the mass of the butane. We can check. First we'll write the chemical equation and for the equivalent weight. We know the molecular weight of butane. Butane C4 H10 that can react with 6.5 moles of oxygen. We can give 4 moles of carbon dioxide and 5 moles of water. So here molar mass of butane. How much? This is 48. 58 is the molar mass of butane. But we required equivalent weight. To calculate equivalent weight, we required the N factor. Then what is the N factor of butane in this particular reaction? Here carbon, the oxidation state 10 by 4. This is minus 10 by 4. Hydrogen is a positive. And here carbon oxidation state plus 4. Now it is changing from minus 10 by 4 to plus 10 by 4. Sorry, plus 4. Change in oxidation state. Is equals to 4 minus into minus plus 10 by 4. That can give 16, 26 by 4, 6.25. The change in oxidation state is 6.5. This is per carbon, but if it is, see the butane, there are 4 carbon atoms are there per butane molecule. So N factor now is equals to 6.5 into 4. That can give 24, 26. 26 is the N factor for butane. Now equivalent weight is 58 by 26. These values, if you substitute that formula, W, mass of the butane required, weight of the butane required, equivalent weight, mass by N factor, mass is 58 by N factor 26, I, the current is given 9.65 amperes, the time for 30 minutes, so 13 to 60 by 96,500 and current efficiency 80%, so 0.8 or 80 by 100. If you simplify this one, overall you will get 0.85 grams. So for the production of that much amount of current for 30 minutes with current efficiency 80, we required the butane is 0.85 grams.